Lieutenant Nari stepped forward before Captain Juan could respond, her hand resting casually on her sidearm. She had grown up in the underground cities of Earth's Korean peninsula, where radiation storms and toxic air had forged a population, harder than diamond. The Keth's challenge resonated with something primal in her DNA, something that remembered when humans hunted megafauna with sharpened sticks. The lead Keth introduced himself as Vex, a name that seemed to cause minor distortions. In the air when spoken, he explained the rules with the enthusiasm of someone describing a favorite game. No weapons beyond what their respective biologies provided, enhanced by whatever augmentations their species favored. The combat would continue until only one species remained standing. Specialist Tay began calculating odds while checking his combat stims. His augmented reflexes were military grade, designed to help human soldiers compete with aliens who had evolved for warfare. The irony was not lost on him, that humans needed technology to match what these beings possessed naturally, yet humans had something else. Something that had carried them from cave-dwelling scavengers to masters of their hostile world. The Keith moved to clear a space in the command center, their movements hypnotic in their alien grace. They seemed to flow rather than walk, conserving energy while displaying the fluid lethality that had made them apex predators. When they prepared for combat, their bodies underwent subtle changes. Muscles became more defined, their skin darkened to absorb light, and their eyes dilated until they were pools of black reflection. Captain Juan activated his combat protocols, feeling the familiar rush as his augmentations came online. His reaction time increased tenfold. His strength doubled and his pain receptors dampened to manageable levels. Around him, his team underwent similar transformations as their military enhancements activated. The first exchange happened faster than unaugmented. Eyes could follow. Vex moved like liquid shadow, closing the distance between himself and Nari in a heartbeat. His clawed hand swept toward her throat with enough force to decapitate an unprotected human. But Nari was not unprotected, and she was definitely not unprepared. She ducked under the strike while simultaneously driving her elbow upward, aiming for Vex's solar plexus. The impact should have folded him in half, but instead it felt like hitting reinforced steel. Vex absorbed the blow and countered, with a knee strike that would have shattered human ribs if it had connected. Around them, the other combatants engaged with similar ferocity. The humans fought with tactical precision, using teamwork and calculated aggression. The Keth fought like natural disasters given form, each one a perfect killing machine honed by millions of years of evolution. The air filled with the sounds of combat that would have been impossible between less durable species. What neither side had anticipated was how evenly matched they would prove to be. The Keth possessed superior individual capabilities, but humans fought as a coordinated unit. Where one human was overwhelmed, another stepped in to provide support. Where the Keth expected victory through superior physicality, they found humans who refused to acknowledge defeat. The battle had been raging for 30 minutes when both sides realized they were facing something unprecedented. Specialist Tay found himself locked in combat with a Keth who seemed to learn his fighting patterns in real time. Every technique he used became less effective as his opponent adapted, forcing him to constantly evolve his approach. The Keth were experiencing similar frustration. Their opponent, a human female named Sue, seemed to possess an inhuman stubbornness that bordered on the supernatural. No matter how much punishment she absorbed, she continued fighting with the same intensity. Her augmentations were healing damage almost as quickly as it was inflicted, while her tactical software analyzed and countered their combat techniques. Captain Juan had engaged Vex in what could only be described as a mutual attempt at controlled demolition. Both fighters were using the environment as a weapon, hurling debris and using the station's damaged systems to their advantage. When Vex tore a support beam from the wall to use as a club, Juan responded by rerouting power through damaged conduits to create electromagnetic fields that disrupted his opponent's enhanced nervous system. The combat had evolved beyond simple physical confrontation into something resembling lethal chess. Each side was forced to innovate, to push beyond their normal capabilities in response to an opponent who matched their lethality. The humans discovered that their augmentations could be pushed far beyond safe parameters when survival was at stake. The Keth found that their evolutionary advantages meant little against opponents who refused to be intimidated by superior physical capabilities. Lieutenant Nari had been thrown through 3 bulkheads by her Keth opponent, yet she kept returning to the fight with new strategies. Her military training had taught her to treat pain as information rather than limitation. Each injury provided data about her opponent's capabilities. Each exchange revealed weaknesses that could be exploited. The Keth warrior facing her, who called himself Zix, began to display something resembling respect for his opponent. In his species language, he began referring to her by a term that roughly translated to worthy death giver. This was not meant as an insult, but as the highest compliment one apex predator could give another. As the battle continued, both sides began to realize that victory might not be possible through conventional means. The humans' technology allowed them to match the Keth's natural advantages, while the Keth's adaptability countered human tactical superiority. What had begun as a contest to determine the superior Deathworld species was becoming something else entirely. The station's damaged systems began failing under the stress of the combat. Artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Atmospheric processors struggled to maintain breathable air, and structural integrity warnings echoed through empty corridors. The combatants were literally fighting in an environment that was trying to kill them all, yet neither side showed any inclination to call a halt to the battle. It was Specialist Tay who first noticed the external threat. His enhanced hearing detected the distinctive whine of approaching spacecraft engines. Multiple vessels were converging on the station, and their energy signatures matched nothing in the galactic databases. Something else had been drawn by the violence, something that viewed both humans and Keth as potential prey. The attacking fleet materialized from hyperspace like a swarm of metallic insects, their ships designed with an aesthetic that spoke of cold efficiency rather than beauty. Captain Juan recognized the configuration from intelligence briefings, harvester vessels, belonging to a machine intelligence that viewed organic life as raw material for their expansion. Vex paused mid-strike, his predatory instincts immediately recognizing a threat that superseded their current combat. The harvesters had no interest in honorable combat or testing their limits against worthy opponents. They simply consumed everything organic they encountered, converting biological matter into more of themselves. The station shuddered as the first boarding pods impacted the hull, their drill heads boring through armor plating with mechanical precision. Within minutes, the corridors filled with the sound of advancing machinery, not the improvised weapons of desperate survivors, but purpose-built instruments of organic extinction. Lieutenant Nari found herself standing back-to-back with Zix, the Keth warrior who had been trying to kill her moments before. The irony was not lost on either of them, but survival took precedence over personal combat. The first wave of harvester drones rounded the corner like a tide of chrome and cutting edges. These machines had been designed to efficiently process organic matter. They moved with the relentless precision of factory equipment, their weapons optimized for dismemberment and harvesting rather than quick kills. Against most galactic species, they were unstoppable. Against Deathworlders, they faced something they had not been programmed to handle. Specialist Tay grabbed a severed harvester limb and began using it as a weapon against its former comrades. The machine's tactical programs had no protocol for opponents who turned their own technology against them with such casual brutality. Sue, the human who had been trading blows with a Keth moments before, now worked alongside her former opponent to create improvised explosive devices from the station's damaged systems. The combined human-Keth force moved through the station like a natural disaster with tactical coordination. Where the humans provided strategy and technological innovation, the Keth provided raw physical capability and predatory instincts. The harvesters found themselves facing opponents who treated their supposedly overwhelming force as merely another environmental hazard to overcome. Captain Juan coordinated the defense from the command center, using his enhanced reflexes to manage multiple tactical displays simultaneously. Vex positioned himself as a mobile assault unit, moving through the station service corridors to strike at harvester formations from unexpected angles. Together, they began to turn the station into a trap that would consume the mechanical invaders. 2. Battle became a masterclass in Deathworlder cooperation. Humans brought their technological adaptability and tactical flexibility, while the Keth provided their evolutionary perfection and predatory excellence. The harvesters, designed to overwhelm through superior numbers and mechanical efficiency, found themselves being systematically dismantled by opponents who treated impossible odds as normal operating conditions. What emerged from this forced cooperation was something that neither species had anticipated. The humans began incorporating Keth combat techniques into their tactical doctrine, while the Keth started using human-style coordination to enhance their individual effectiveness. Both species were learning from each other in real time, their Deathworld origins providing common ground for mutual adaptation. The tide of battle began to turn when the combined force reached the station's power core. Working together, they managed to overload the fusion reactor in a controlled manner that created an electromagnetic pulse throughout the station. The harvester drones, dependent on their electronic systems, were reduced to expensive scrap metal within seconds. In the aftermath of the battle, both species found themselves reassessing their assumptions about the galaxy and their place in it. The command center was littered with the remains of harvester drones, testament to what could be accomplished when Deathworlders worked together rather than against each other. Captain Juan extended his hand to Vex in the human gesture of respect and partnership. The Keth leader studied the offered appendage for a moment before grasping it with surprising gentleness. His species had their own rituals of mutual recognition, but the human custom seemed appropriate for the circumstances. Lieutenant Nari and Zix had developed what could only be described as professional admiration during their cooperation against the harvesters. They spent several minutes comparing combat techniques, each curious about how the other species had evolved their particular approaches to survival. The exchange was conducted in a mixture of human standard and Keth hunting language, with much gesturing and demonstration. Specialist Tay was already deep in technical discussion with the other surviving Keth, comparing the efficiency of biological versus technological augmentation. His scanner readings showed that Keth physiology incorporated several principles that human technology had been trying to replicate for decades. The potential for mutual technological exchange was staggering. As they worked together to restore the station's life support systems, both species began to realize the implications of their encounter. The galaxy was vast, and while most species had evolved on relatively benign worlds, there were others like themselves scattered throughout the stars. Deathworlders were rare, but they were not unique. Vex proposed an alliance that went beyond simple non-aggression. The Keth had spent centuries seeking worthy challenges, while humans had been exploring the galaxy in search of their place among the stars. Together, they could seek out other Deathworld species and form a coalition of civilizations that understood the value of strength forged in adversity. The idea resonated with both groups. They had proven that Deathworlders could cooperate without losing their edge, that their competitive nature could be channeled into mutual growth rather than mutual destruction. The harvesters had provided an external threat that demonstrated the value of such cooperation. Captain Juan activated his ship's communication systems and began composing a report that would change human foreign policy forever. First contact. Protocols would need to be revised to account for species that could match human durability and aggression. The Korean Exploration Command would want to establish formal diplomatic relations with the Keth as quickly as possible. As the human team prepared to depart, they carried with them something more valuable than any technological discovery. They had found kindred spirits among the stars, other species that understood what it meant to survive in environments that actively sought to destroy all life. The universe suddenly seemed less lonely and far more dangerous. The last image transmitted from the station showed humans and Keth working side by side to repair the damage caused by their battles. Both species had found what they had been seeking without realizing it, not supremacy over other Deathworlders, but partnership with beings who shared their particular form of stubborn resilience. In the depths of space, other ancient stations drifted silently, waiting for their own encounters between species that had learned to thrive where others could barely survive. The galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place as Deathworlders began to find each other and discover that cooperation could be even more dangerous than competition. The alliance between humans and Keth would become the foundation for what galactic historians would later call the Deathworld Compact, a coalition of species that transformed the political landscape of the galaxy through their shared understanding that survival was the ultimate measure of worth. Captain Juan walked slowly through the broken metal hallways of the dead space station. His boots made loud sounds on the metal floor with each step. The lights above his head kept flashing on and off, making strange shadows on the walls. His team followed behind him, moving carefully through the dangerous place. The air inside the station felt thick and hard to breathe. It tasted like metal, and something else that made Juan feel sick. His special suit kept him safe from the bad air and deadly rays that would kill most aliens in just a few minutes. But humans were different. Humans were tough. Lieutenant Nari walked next to him, looking at her small computer screen. She made a confused face as she read the numbers the machine was telling her, things that did not make sense. The energy readings were all wrong. Nothing matched what they knew about normal space technology. The hallways seemed built for creatures that were not like most space aliens. They were too small, and the doors were in weird places. The temperature kept changing from very hot to very cold every few minutes. This place was built by something that lived in bad conditions, just like humans did. They had been walking and searching for 2 hours when Nari found the first dead body. It looked almost like a human, but it had 4 arms instead of 2. Its skin was dark purple and black and kept changing colors even though it was dead. The worst part was how it died. Something had killed this creature with terrible force. The wounds were huge and deep. Whatever killed it had torn through strong armor like it was paper. Tay knelt down next to another dead body and used his medical scanner to check it. The scanner beeped and showed numbers that made Tay shake his head in surprise. These dead creatures had bones 3 times stronger than human bones. Their muscles could lift things as heavy as machines. Their hearts and blood were made for fighting and surviving in terrible places. These aliens were built for war, but something had killed them all. The team kept walking deeper into the station. They found more dead bodies everywhere. Burn marks covered the walls, showing that the defenders had fought hard before they died. Metal doors had been closed to keep the attackers out, but something had ripped them open with just its hands. Whatever attacked this place was incredibly strong. It was strong enough to fight creatures that were already super strong. The dead aliens had tried everything to stop their attackers. They had used weapons and locked doors and fought together, but nothing worked. In the main control room, they found what they were looking for. 3 tall, thin creatures stood with their backs turned toward the door. They were standing over a big pile of dead bodies. Their arms and legs were too long, and they moved in a way that looked wrong, like they were floating instead of walking. When the 3 creatures turned around, Juan saw their faces and felt cold fear in his stomach. Their eyes were completely black and shiny like dark glass. Their faces looked smart but also hungry, like wild animals that were always hunting. Captain Juan lifted his weapon and pointed it at them. But the first creature started talking. Before he could shoot, its voice was strange and made sounds that Juan could feel in his bones. But it spoke perfect human language, even though it was clearly not human. The creature said its name was Vex, and that his people were called the Keth. They came from a world where everything was trying to kill everything else. Every plant and animal and even the weather was deadly. Their whole planet was one big fight for survival. Vex explained that the Keth had become so good at surviving that their homeworld became boring. There was nothing left that could challenge them or make them afraid. So they went out into space looking for worthy enemies, things that could actually hurt them and make them fight for their lives. The dead aliens, all around the room, were called Voran. They also came from a death world where only the strongest could live. The Voran had found this station first and made it their base. But then the Keth found them, and both sides were happy to finally find someone strong enough to fight. What happened next was not really a war. It was more like a celebration. Both the Keth and the Voran were excited to find enemies that could actually kill them. They fought with joy, testing their strength against creatures that were as dangerous as they were. The battle had lasted for days with both sides using everything they had. The Vorin were incredibly strong and could tear metal with their bare hands. The Keth were fast and smart and could adapt to any fighting style. But in the end, only 3 Keth were left alive. Now these 3 survivors looked at Juan and his team with the same hungry look they had given the Vorin. Vex smiled, showing teeth that looked like sharp glass. He said he could tell that humans were also from a death world. Humans had the same look in their eyes that all death world creatures had. The look of something that had climbed to the top of a world that was trying to kill it every single day. Humans walked and moved like predators, even when they were trying to be peaceful. Vex said he wanted to find out which death world made the best fighters. Were humans stronger than Keth? Or were Keth better killers than humans? There was only one way to find out, and that was to fight until only one side was left standing. The other 2 Keth moved to stand beside Vex. They all had the same excited look on their faces, like children who had just been offered their favorite game to play. But this game would end with some of them dead. Juan looked at his team and saw the same expression on their faces that the Keth had. Something deep inside them was responding to the challenge. Something that remembered when humans hunted giant animals with sharp sticks. Something that had kept humans alive on a world full of poisonous plants and deadly weather and creatures with claws and teeth. Lieutenant Nari stepped forward and put her hand on her weapon. She grew up in the underground cities where radiation storms happened every day, and the air outside could kill you in minutes. She knew what it meant to be from a death world specialist. Tay checked his combat drugs and felt his enhanced reflexes wake up. His body had been changed by human technology to make him faster and stronger than normal. But even normal humans were already incredibly tough compared to most aliens. The Keth and the humans stared at each other across the room full of dead bodies. Both sides knew this was going to happen from the moment they met. When death worlders found other death worlders, there was always going to be a fight. It was just their nature. Vex raised his hands and showed claws that could cut through steel. He asked if the humans were ready to find out who were the real apex predators, the ultimate survivors, the best killers in the galaxy. Captain Juan looked around at his team and nodded slowly. They had come here to explore and learn about other species, but sometimes learning meant fighting, and humans had been fighting for their entire existence as a species. The question was about to be answered through blood and violence, just like everything else in the galaxy when Deathworlders were involved.